The problem with calling Trump a threat to democracy is that we have a really narrow idea of what it looks like when democracies fail. We imagine democratic failure as being some spectacular event, a military coup, or an illegal power grab, or the declaration of martial law.
To protect the Republic of the Philippines and our democracy.
We don't really imagine it looking like this.
It's a child's desk, but that's okay. It's the smallest desk I've ever seen.
But political scientists do. Because in a country like the US, the death of democracy is gonna start off looking kind of normal. So normal, you might not even notice it's happening until it's too late.
Well, I respect the move, but the entire thing has been a witch hunt, and there is no collusion between...
Trump's firing of former FBI Director James Comey has gotten a lot of media attention, in part because it's really easy to explain why it matters. If Trump fired Comey over the Russia investigation, that would be obstruction of justice, which is a crime. But a lot of what worries political scientists about Trump is tougher to explain in a soundbite like that, because for the most part, it's stuff that's totally legal.
It turns out that government officials can exploit weaknesses in the law in ways that are destructive to the rule of law as a whole.
This bearer of bad news is Aziz Huq. He's a law professor at the University of Chicago, and he's written a lot about a concept called democratic backsliding, which kind of sounds like something Hillary Clinton does at a wedding. Backsliding is what happens when a democratically elected government starts attacking the institutions that make democracy work. I know, the dance thing was cooler. And Huq argues that what makes backsliding so dangerous is that it's really hard to know when it starts.
In many other countries, the way that we see democratic backsliding happening is through a series of discrete legal changes, each of which is on their own completely lawful.
A great example of what backsliding looks like is Venezuela's former president, Hugo Chavez. The 90s. Chavez was elected as a democratic populist. But over time, he changed.
And while remaining popular, Chavez has been anything but democratic.
He got frustrated with opposition from courts and the media, so he started doing things like firing judges, using anti-defamation laws to silence journalists, and even describing unfriendly news organizations as, quote, enemies of the homeland.
Los dueños de medios dicen mentiras, elaboran mentiras. Los medios de comunicación no siempre están al servicio de la verdad.
What's scary about Chavez's story is that he didn't need a military coup to screw up Venezuela's democracy.
The man who came to office by democracy is doing everything he can to snuff it out.
He did it legally by slowly turning his supporters and political allies against the country's democratic institutions.
Yo les recomiendo que se tomen un calmante, que cojan mínimo, porque si no, yo les voy a aplicar el mínimo. Yo mismo les voy a aplicar el mínimo.
Autocrats in other parts of the world have gone after those institutions very early on in the process of backsliding.
And that's what worries political scientists about Trump. Trump shows a deep distrust of America's democratic institutions. He lashes out at judges, calls journalists the enemy of the people, accuses watchdog agencies of conspiring against him. He questions the legitimacy of an election that he won. His White House stonewalls reporters to avoid answering questions.
Off. Off. It's off.
He is suspicious of the mechanisms that limit his authority.
This is an unprecedented judicial overreach.
And he encourages his supporters to be too. That is a catastrophic thing to be happening in a democracy. It's how democratic backsliding starts. But the thing is, none of this is illegal. As long as Republicans in Congress go along with it, there's nothing to stop Trump from publicly criticizing basic democratic institutions.
Our Constitution just doesn't do a very good job of protecting us against certain kinds of democratic failure. Whether we're in a moment of democratic backsliding really depends upon the character of our political leaders.
Which brings us back to Comey, and why it's so hard to talk about democratic backsliding without sounding paranoid.
Hey, Trey.
Tiki, what's going on? You here?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, all right. I'm just finna do a little presentation here. We got some things going on where I felt the need to do it. It's I got some things coming up here. I don't want to give it away, but I'm building to something right now. But this is just a prelude.
Okay.
But, how you been doing today? I saw the latest video you put out.
Good. Trying to figure out which one to do next.
Look, I want you to. want to get this video to you. So before we leave, we're going to I got you on Instagram, but I'm probably going to try to get the email because I don't know how big the file is. And
Okay.
they might not let me send it through the email. So I'm going to have to figure out some kind of way to either compress and give it to you. But basically, it's a synopsis of all the ones you've been doing about the Swarty individual.
Uh-huh.
And remember when I was talking to you about our people that came by way of Russia and England, and Europe and stuff? And that really happened. And basically all the videos that you've been putting up is solidifying what I was talking about and saying. I was like, well, shit, she already know. But basically the one that I'm going to give you is kind of like an overall synopsis of all of the ones that you've been doing individual. So it's right on time. See how God works?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it looks real good because a lot of people don't know that, don't have that information. And these are the things that I think us as a people, if we understood better who we are and where we come from, we might act a little bit differently, you know?
Right.
A lot of people don't attribute or attach any importance to themselves, like in terms of having any historical heroes or people that they can identify with. That's what the whole big thing was about Obama. It's like now finally we got somebody that our kids can look up to. I'm like, shit, we got so many people in the past that our kids can look up to beyond Obama. They just don't know about them and don't get to hear about them because either they people are too dense to tell them or just don't have the knowledge to tell them, you know?
Or don't care.
That too. That's always a factor. That's
Yes,
always
it
you gotta have at least the desire, you know.
Right.
Other than that, you're gonna sit out it. But let's get back to this. I'm gonna let him speak a little bit, but then I'm finna blast you. Watch, you finna be surprised.
Okay.
We live in a media environment that is really bad at putting things in context, that is designed to bombard us with breaking news and discrete pieces of information. And that makes it hard to identify democratic backsliding when it starts. Because unless it clearly breaks the law, it's really tough to explain why any one Trump tweet or scandal poses a threat to democracy. So when Trump calls a federal judge a so-called judge, it's just a one-off comment.
Does anyone honestly believe President Trump is going to ignore this judge's order because he's a, quote, so-called judge?
When Trump calls the press the enemy of the American people, it's all talk.
He sounds like a broken record. It's just kind of like, what else you got, Donald Trump?
I don't think that new media are well designed to tell this kind of story because those media are designed to convey information in very small chunks. The real story is not the discrete action in a particular moment in time, but some bigger picture.
Democratic backsliding is one of those things that you can't really see from up close.
It is only when you look at changes in the aggregate that one sees the effect upon democracy as a set of institutions and practices.
That doesn't mean the Comey stuff isn't important. Obstruction of justice is obviously a big deal. But some of the biggest threats to democracy are way less dramatic, way more normal looking. And if you're waiting for the CNN chyron announcing that it's time to panic, you're gonna be waiting for a long time.
A global macro investor betting how the world's going to go. 1971, the United States had paper bills that were like checks in a checkbook. They didn't have any value. But what they would do is they'd get you gold. Because the U.S. wrote more checks than it had gold in the bank, the gold was going down. And on August 15th, 1971, I was clerking on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And I watched Nixon said, they're not going to get you gold. So it defaulted. And I went on the floor of the stock exchange and I said, wow, this is a crisis. And I thought it would go down on the stock market and it went up a lot. And so I researched it and I found that on March 5th, 1933, the exact same thing happened. Roosevelt announced that they were not going to get the gold and that they would go off that and that they would print a lot of money. And they printed a lot of money. And what I realized at that time, and saw many times since, that anything that surprised me may not have happened in my lifetime, but happened before. I studied the Great Depression. Because I did that, I was able to anticipate the 2008 financial crisis. We made a lot of money in the financial crisis because I understood what happened in the Great Depression. So in this case, three big things are happening that never happened before in our lifetimes. And the last time they happened was in the 1930 to 45 period. And those three things are the creation of a lot of printing of money to pay for the debts. We needed to at the time, but it was very overdone. We actually sent out checks which were about 5 times as much as the amount that would have compensated people for their losses. Where'd they get the money from? The government borrowed the money. Who did they borrow the money from? The Federal Reserve. What they did is the Federal Reserve prints the money and they buy the debt. And that's how it works. So now everybody gets all these checks.
Now, that part right there is significant. You heard them say that the debt was sold to the Federal Reserve, meaning that I don't understand if everybody understand how loans and debts work, but if you are indebted to somebody, they basically control you. You know, and I guess the most rudimental sense of the word, they control you if you owe them. And that's why they say when you're in debt, it's likened to going back into slavery, or when you're in jail, it's likened to going back into slavery. Now, we're going to get back into the Federal Reserve, but more than that, you got to understand who sits on the chairs and the chairman of the board when it comes to these Federal Reserves, because they just calling out a name Federal Reserve. But what you don't understand is that China, Germany, and a few others have investments in the Federal Reserves, to where now a lot of those debts that are owed by the American people are brought up by Chinese immigrants and Chinese nationalists and things of that nature. So, I mean, I was telling people, like, if China was to sign off on the debt that America owes them, overnight we will become Chinese citizens. And that's just that. Here go the poem, Bob. See him? Let me get your ass reported right quick. So block user. And let me see, can I report you? Yeah, we're gonna report you, buddy. There go. He already active. But anyway, when you look at it, he who got the most money on the planet is what they basically saying who running shit, because they're gonna tell you how America came into to be the superpower. It's coming.
Okay.
Salute, says. I see you, King Rabbit.
And everybody's happy because they get all these checks. But when they get all this money and then they spend it, everybody's surprised they got inflation. We've increased the amount of money by 25% or more. What has happened, the price of anything is equal to the amount of money and credit spent on it divided by the quantity of it sold. And so when you increase the amount of money and credit, buying power, spending, by a lot more than you increase the quantity, you get inflation. What happened in both of those cases is they hit zero interest rates. So I can't lower the price of money, so what do? Number two is the amount of internal conflict that's going on in the United States, the size of the wealth gaps, the size of the political conflicts is the greatest since not only the 30 to 45 period, it's much greater than that, 1900. You have to go back to 1900 to have that conflict. We're having a form of a civil war where populism is one side in a battle with the other side that won't accept losing. That's why in the next elections, there's a good chance that neither side will accept the result and accept losing. History shows that when the causes people are behind are more important to them than the system is in jeopardy. Right now, there's not much agreement and the polarity is becoming greater. The political right now, if you follow politics, if you even watch events like, what will the reaction be to Supreme Court making the decision of Roe versus Wade? Why are moderates in the political system choosing not to run for re-election? We have this internal conflict that is actually threatening rule of law and the adherence to the Constitution. It's entirely possible that people with different views, they will go to different places and they will fight. So that degree has never happened in my lifetime before. I was born in 1949. 1945 was when the New World Order began. These world orders happen because there's a conflict and then somebody wins. So that brings me to the third thing that's happening, which is the rise of a great power to be comparable, China, and with it, Russia, and they form alliances, right? There's the Allied powers and the Axis powers, two different sides, kind of, and then they're competing. Because what happens is when you have a new world order, the winners of the war get to set the rules. So in 1945, America won, and it was the richest country in the world. It had 80% of the world's gold, and gold was money. And it had 50% of the world's economy, and it had a monopoly on military power. And so it set the rules, and that's why the UN is in New York, and the World Bank and IMF are in Washington, D.C. It set the rules. So that's changing. There are certain things that we're doing. We're spending a lot more than we're earning. We're living off the printing presses. We're letting the infrastructure go. We're giving our next generation debts. We're not educating all children well. And we have a world order battle. There is an Allied and Axis power kind of thing that is emerging. There's certainly a competition. There are 5 different kinds of wars. There's a trade war. There's a technology war. There is a geopolitical influence war. There's a capital war. And there could be a military war. There is a military war now in Europe with Russia. And those are the patterns of history. And there's only one way to do well, and that is to be strong in all those ways. So I'm very bipartisan. I believe the opposite of the polarity, the extremes of the left or the right. I pray for the middle and bipartisanship to find ways. I've watched the process evolve in the cycle. So what happens is you have the war, you have the new rules. Wars are sort of great equalizers, and then you come back. And then you have a period of peace and prosperity. You have peace because nobody wants to fight the dominant power, and you have more equal people, and then they have prosperity. But the way the system works is over a period of time, that creates differences in wealth. And that's...
I got to pause this right here. Hey, King Rabbit, I hope you saw that. Did you see that wave and that graph that they put up that was likened to a genetic type of track, the way that looked? Didn't that look interesting? And they was telling you about the genetics of America and the economy and all that. That looked real hip. Did you see that, Chicky?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. That looked, and it looked just like that DNA wheel what we was looking at on Sam's page. Yeah, see, yeah, they deep with this. They deep with this. Hey, you gotta see this. They might put it up again, King Rabbit, but they just made that graph that they was talking about the economy look just like a DNA track of information being passed down through the genetics. And now we're talking about the genetics of the economy. So it's deep. Let's continue.
Fine. You provide capital. That's the capital system. People with great ideas come along and they're productive and inventive and they produce great things and so on. But as they obtain the greater wealth, they also obtain greater benefits, like they could educate their children better. And if you're poor, you don't get to educate your children better. And so the polarity increases and it becomes unfair because, we all should have like equal opportunity. And then you also build up a lot of debt. Here's the irony of it. As these cycles begin at their later stages, the rich are the ones who get into debt. Now, you would think it's exactly the opposite. It's easier to have a good living standard and save. But like the United States, when per capita income was 40 times that in China, it started to borrow from China because they have a big saving mentality. When you have a poor person who doesn't have much, they want to save. Their saving is in our currency because when they think, oh, how do I save in world currency? I'm going to buy dollar-denominated debt and I'm going to save in it when we borrow. And that's been the case. We didn't experience what our prior generations experienced. I know my dad went through World War II. He went through depression and war. His mentality is very different in terms of, what you take for granted or how you save. And that creates a cycle. One man's debts are somebody else's assets. The world right now is holding a lot of money in debt instruments. It could be money market funds. It could be bond funds. And we were in an environment in which bonds went up for 40 years and everybody's comfortable, and there wasn't an inflation pressure. And so everybody thinks that cash is the safest place to be because they don't think about its buying power. And so what happens is You have to satisfy both the debtors and the creditors, which is difficult to do when you've got more. Okay, you got a lot of debt. Because if you pay that debt back in real money, in hard money, so the guy gets paid back the buying power that he lent, that is going to be really bad because you won't have enough money. So the easiest tax is to tax through the printing of money. And that's because, like, nobody asked where did the money come from. You know, the checks came in and we're all happy and we didn't take the money away from anybody, but you lose the buying power. So as you get the inflation for that, you get the behavior change. So still, like, you have to make a choice. Do you want to own that stuff or not? And so what happens is when you make that choice that you don't want to own it, you sell it. And so the amount of selling is not just the deficit. The government will have a deficit of 5 or 6% of GDP. It'll have to borrow. So that means it sells bonds or sells debt of 5 or 6% of GDP. But if others sell too, because they say, I'm not getting a real return, I'm not going to hold that, then you have a lot of selling. That means that either interest rates go up a lot and shut the thing down, or the government prints more money. And that's the mechanics. History's shown us, chapter 3, I think it is, called The Value of Money. And 100% of the time when they're in that position, they'll print the money. Here's the big thing that people think. Money and financial assets are not wealth. They're claims on wealth, but they're worthless. It has no value. It's not real. It's just like digital. It only has wealth, real wealth, if you sell it and you go buy something. It works as long as people who are holding those financial assets want to keep holding those financial assets, even though they're losing buying power to them. It's a Ponzi scheme. That's why if you look at history, even in the Old Testament, there was this idea of the year of Jubilee. What it meant is, okay, you always have these financial obligations rising relative to the other. It happened so often that they said, okay, let's just plan on it. Like every 50 years, we're going to have to wipe it clean. Old Testament in the Bible. Okay, and they said every year we're going to have to do it. And then it was a system actually where they would say, now that you know it's going to be wiped out in 50 years, you will operate as though it will wipe out in 50 years, and therefore you won't have the Ponzi scheme as much. But that is how the Ponzi scheme has always worked, right? So that's what it is. Now, you have a choice. You can hold those things, but then as they start having bad returns and you're holding them, what are you going to do? How are you going to deal with that? I want to be first out, but that's why you can be writer. You can be writer if you go through the jungle like I'm describing with people that see things that you can't see and you're open-minded, you can be writer. That's why I say that the key to success is much more in knowing how to deal with what you don't know than anything you know. There are two things. First was interconnected and therefore safer. That was the theory prior to World War II because they would marry each other. Royalty would be married and everybody's in the same family. There's no evidence either in the actions that are being taken or in history. Even members of the same family can kill each other. They can be so entwined in the same family that they give them plenty to fight about. The second one in that dynamic is it depends on both countries. Do you have a win-win relationship or do you have a lose-lose relationship? The problems with China have a history. There was one thing under Obama, then there was a tilt and it changed to Trump. And they're now at the point where it's almost irreconcilable differences and each side is worried that the other side could kill it. In the book, I described the prisoner's dilemma. The prisoner's dilemma is, let's imagine that there are two people and the best thing you could do is cooperate, but you don't know whether the other is going to cooperate or kill you. What should you do? You should kill the other one because otherwise there's some risk that they kill you and survival matters and it's tough to get to cooperation. And so we're kind of in that situation now. China is essentially in the enviable position of finding out how a war goes. And so because the NATO countries and Russia and Ukraine are in its type of war, you can see how that goes. You can see, for example, that the U.S. brings out its big weapon is sanctions. By the way, sanctions have always in history been the big weapon that's brought out before the big military weapon. Like in World War II, Japan was expanding in Asia and the United States imposed sanctions. They sort of embargoed the oil, made it more difficult for them to get oil, and they froze their assets. And so they were stuck, and then they reacted and they bombed Pearl Harbor. And then we had World War II. I've been going to China since 1984, not for money, but for interest. Because if I can find interesting places with interesting people and see it through their eyes, I can do that. And I was able to help them learn about the financial markets and so on. And that's led me to know the leaders there, as well as lots of poor people, and to see it through their eyes. And I would say they do not want a war. So we have something that's very similar to that. Now, when I look at the situation there, I think there are three big questions that we don't yet have the answers to. The first question is who wins in the UK-NATO war, essentially. Does Putin win or does the West win? And here's what winning looks like for Putin. That he controls the eastern part of the Ukraine without being regularly threatened, that the economy in Russia has something like a 12% downturn, but is tolerable. Now, since Russia imports everything, you could actually totally shut them off. But how much will those sanctions crush Russia, or will it be tolerable? They are so used to suffering that they're almost uncomfortable if they're not suffering. If you go back 1917, they had the revolution, they lose World War II, they lose 30 million people. Then Stalin comes in and they lose another 30 million people. You know, it's that kind of thing. They have communism. Then they have a bankruptcy and the whole thing collapses in 89. So they won't trade off that issue generally for a 12% fall in GDP. I would say the odds of that are very, very, very small because of a variety of things in terms of security and other things. We'll see. But if he loses, and he appears to be losing, I think he'll escalate. In other words, I don't think he'll go out quiet. And so if he loses, I think that you will see escalation, and that'll take the form of probably threatening nuclear. And also it's a very dangerous thing. And we'll see what the power of sanctions are. And then the third thing we'll see is how the sides line up. West and East, you could look at the countries right now and you could look at their actions and you could see which side they're lining up. Do they abide by the sanctions? Do they not abide by the sanctions? So the beginning of the picture of which are the allied countries and which are the access countries, like in World War II, there's a European war and there's an Asian war and different countries line up, but you know, by and large, they're consistent. And so we're beginning to see those things. Only in Europe, it's so interesting. And I could rattle the countries off. India, Brazil, Mexico, Indonesia, China, almost half the world has taken either the other side or has said, I'm not going to participate. Don't make the mistake of just looking at the European NATO countries. So anyway, China can watch that and how that works and learn a lot. The world has now changed to a whole different dynamic in which ideologies rule. Fight and rule. For example, think about it this way. The person who makes decisions for Twitter will have a bigger effect on our lives and choices than the Supreme Court's decisions. In other words, I could do it this way or I could do it that way. The system we used to be in was a fairly open system in which economics would rule. If you made more money, you got more resources, and resources were allocated by that. That's much less the case now. Now ideologies are taking control. So for example, DeSantis, governor of Florida, and Disney. The ideology that you have, and that I will fight for it, and I will use all the resources I have, is the determiner. And in some extent, it almost needs to, like in some respects, what's going to get money to the kids in schools that we're talking about. But that notion that if the causes that people are behind are more important to them than the system is in jeopardy. Because that system of how do we work these things out together becomes a power thing. I don't think you're going to see either side giving up, losing. You know, we played by the game, playing cricket or something, and then we go off the field. That was amazing that we did that for so long. But I don't think that you're going to do that as much because it's a win at all cost game. And I think that you're going to have this pervasively within the United States. So you get more nationalism. You're going to have more nationalism. Why? Because I need self-sufficiency and that other country might be an enemy. And then you go within a country and you see the same thing within a country. I need to fight for what I believe. So we are now in a fight for what you believe type of environment that will determine things. And we're just not used to it, but that's what's happening. So can we be good with each other? If we could just be good with each other and not fight and be afraid of fighting, have the middle work together and so on. Let the extremists who are fighting calm down. You know, like if I was president, I would have a bipartisan cabinet, because politics now, it's like one side beats the other. On the statistics, roughly speaking, 30% of the population is extreme right by measures such as, there's a range of things. What percentage of the Republicans or Democrats think that members of the other party should die? It's 15 and 10. What percentage would not want their child to marry the member of the other party? What percentage of those think the election was stolen? If you start to use those numbers, roughly 30% is, by my measure, probably pretty extreme right. And because of that, that's the majority of the Republican Party has to have unified. Maybe it's 25, maybe it's 30, I don't know. But we know how the Republican Party largely is being influenced by Trump. The parties are fighting within each other, and the moderates are dropping out. Not so much they can't finance, it's because of the way politics is. It's brutal and it's lies. You can only win if you are one of those extremes that win the primary, because they're in that war. So now you hear that I agree that the majority is in the middle, but there is a dynamic here. That's why, like, if I was president, I'd want a bipartisan cabinet, or I want whatever it is that's going to bring, compromise the middle, us together. Like, I believe the president of the United States should be the president for the majority of the people.
Okay, on that note, that's basically how Obama walked in. That was his message. That was why when people was trying to zero in and be like, he's the first black president, he was like, nah, he wasn't with that. He wanted to be a president to all of America. So this bipartisanship that this guy is talking about is real significant, because it makes all the sense in the world. It's like a child being born from two parents that's from two separate cultures. The child of those two separate cultures has to pay homage to both those cultures. And he really can't put one over the other. He has to look at both of them with truth and justice. And so it was with Jesus. This is why all the stories about Jesus being a mulatto is significant. He came from two people that were distinctly different, but he came to give advice to those people in reference to how to live amongst one another and how to get along, and the fact that we were all interconnected. However, the historical Jesus, y'all know the story of what happened to him. And as far as the future Messiah goes, we'll get into that, but let's go somewhere else in this. And this is where the surprise comes for you, Chicky. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go.
The Fall of America by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Just
Introduction.
Listen.
The time is now for a full and clear statement of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching, what he is about, why he is doing it, and why nothing will stop his forward action. First, let it be said that he is not a racist. Unlike the white race, he does not preach the inferiority of any race or group. He does not advocate denial of any group's rights, and categorically asserts that every citizen has the right, should he wish to use it, to exert the rights of citizenship offered him. Either through ignorance or evil intent, some have confused racism with religious dogma. Mr. Elijah Muhammad teaches that the so-called American Negroes are the chosen of Allah. He teaches that all others are among the non-chosen, and nothing they can do will alter that fact. This is the grounds on which so many accuse him of racism. If this be racism, then every religion since man has preached racism. The Jews teach that they are Jehovah's elect. The entire sequence of events that culminated in the death of the man called Jesus was set in action because he, Jesus, sought to destroy the concept of the elect. The Catholic Church teaches that it is the only church. It forbids its members to intermarry with non-Catholics, save under special dispensations, and even then, the children of such marriages must be pledged to the church before the marriage takes place. Catholics are taught not to consort with non-Catholics in religious terms of reference. The Baptist Church teaches that it alone is right, that Christians who have not been submerged under the water have not received true salvation. Admittedly, each of these groups teaches a doctrine that tells its followers that they are the elect, that they are set apart, and that their spiritual insight is the only one worth holding. So does Mr. Elijah Muhammad. Mr. Muhammad says, "We are the elect of Allah," in the same sense that a Jew says he is the elect of Jehovah, or that other denominations pursue their theological ends. If Mr. Muhammad in teaching Islam is accused of racism, then so must every other religious denomination or sect. Much is made of the fact that Mr. Muhammad predicts the early end of the non-Muslims. This is what he believes. This is what he knows. This is what he teaches. If he is wrong, then it is a matter between him and his teacher. But again, the truth of history is on his side. The New Testament is laced with promises that the non-Christians will be destroyed in a fiery death soon to come. Were one to take the time to trace through an elementary course in comparative religion, it would be abundantly clear that every religion has felt its enemies would meet with destruction, and very soon at that. Why the uproar when Mr. Muhammad teaches black men that they are the elect and that their opponents will soon be destroyed? Attacks on Mr. Muhammad have centered around the charge that he and his followers are a cult, a non-religious group. Proponents of this lie say we are actually a racist outfit set on the destruction of the white man. This, of course, is not true. Empires in scripture and political history have risen up over the time of man and have fallen. These empires, the Romans and their Caesars, the Prussians and their Kaisers, the Russians and their czars, the Egyptians and their pharaohs, the Europeans and their kings, the Turks and their sultans, and now the states of America and their presidents. Whatever the name of the empire or the title of the ruler, it was only a grand, clever, psychological trick to dupe the naive masses, then and now, especially the black man of America, from recognizing America as Babylon. The wolf in sheep's clothing, Babylon, is in fact America today. The time has now come for the revealing of the greatest empire of Babylonian type ever to exist. No nation, no empire before fits the description of Babylon as the United States, or of the Babylon ruler as the rulers of America. Mr. Elijah Muhammad is bringing a final truth to the people. He is revealing the secret of the symbols, parables, signs, and prophecies of the scriptures. The Old Testament is a book of prophecy in parables, symbols, and signs. The New Testament is a fulfillment of a prophecy whose time is now. All religions have talked of a doomsday, judgment day, or a type of hell filled with fire and brimstone. Despite America's skill, abundance, technology, materialism, psychology, tricknology, and ability to synthesize, that great ability of making false appear true or real is well known. America can make man-made fibers appear to be wool, butter that never saw a cow, or fruit jam that does not come from fruit trees. Mr. Elijah Muhammad in The Fall of America brings us to the truth, the fateful destiny of America. America has been a country whose leaders' pride has been to refer to it as the greatest country on earth. Babylon, the most powerful country who has as its greatest ambition to be the most armed. More than 35% of its national budget is set aside for military preparation. America boasts of its stockpile of weapons with this great kill capacity. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is a man whose words will hold a high place in history. His words are clear. His is a vivid example of the voice crying in the wilderness for justice. His is the ability to read the handwriting on the wall, as only Daniel could do, despite Belshazzar and his scholars' highest institutional learning. Mr. Muhammad's brilliance of style and accuracy of statement are perfectly compatible in an historian. The Fall of America offers a new interpretation of the American world, which is open to attack by critics, theologians, scientists, historians, and anthropologists. Mr. Elijah Muhammad challenges the contemporaries of today, as Moses threw down his rod as a challenge to Pharaoh of Egypt. He contends that the interpretations of the scriptures, the Bible, and the Holy Quran are important interrelators pertaining to sequences of events leading to the resurrection of the American so-called Negro. Mr. Muhammad shows how events of yesterday and today are the lifestyles depicted in symbols, signs, parables, and prophecies of history and scriptures. The ancient Orient, classical Greece, India, Islam, and Europe previously had their terms. The rise of America to global preeminence in modern times, therefore, appears as the last of a long series of drastic cultural explosions leading to that long-awaited final judgment called by the corrupt as doomsday, as it is their complete end engulfed in a Holocaust, called by the abused Judgment Day, as they are now given a long-deprived justice. An important feature of the Fall of America is the use of non-literary sources, unchallenged, not disproved, being chosen to symbolize, depict, and express trends, movements, and growth of the falling American civilization. The Fall of America is the accurate picture of history and scripture's greatest empire and its community. Such synthesis offers a new and remarkably persuasive pattern for understanding America today. There is no other Babylon. America's rapid decline of morals and spiritualism has led it to the abyss and spiraling decline whose time has come. If the justice and spiritual aspects of scriptures are true, and they are, then America too must pay. If there is natural law of justice or compensation, justice must be given, and America must pay. The Fall of America by Mr. Elijah Muhammad clears up all doubts. Let this suffice as a reply to the detractors who say Mr. Elijah Muhammad and his followers are not of a true religion. These matters being laid on the record, let us now turn to the essence today. The black man in America is no longer willing to listen to misguided teachings of his modern-day elders called Uncle Toms. This is why the Uncle Toms are disturbed. This is why their white masters are concerned. And well, they might be, for the day when the black man of America will scratch where they don't itch and laugh when they are being kicked is over. This is why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in teaching Islam to the black man of America, is under attack. This is why his theological teachings are being distorted into racism. This is why he and his followers who have converted to Islam are being denied the right to worship in their own manner, a right given persons of other faiths. The crux of the matter is, the black man of America is hungry for the leadership Mr. Muhammad so ably offers. The black man of America is looking for more than legalisms. The black man of America wants more than a gradual restoration of his right. What the black man of America seeks is a restoration of his identity as an elect people. What the black man of America seeks is a return to his own, which includes his people, his God, his religion, his language, his part of the earth, and the physical and spiritual reunion with his own nation. But it must be admitted that even more deplorable than the attacks from the white race are the deeds and utterances of other black men who claim love for the unity of black man, but actually through ignorance or love of the enemy of the black man, they are helping the cause of disunity. In his visit to some of the governments of Islam, Mr. Muhammad received the greatest respect and honor of any so-called American Negro ever to visit that world from America. He was shown through their mills, government facilities, farms, canals, irrigation systems, new projects, and mosques. He was welcomed by all and praised for his work of freedom, justice, equality, and Islam for his American black people. While the sound and fury explode among the so-called leaders of black people in America, the real problem goes unattended. It is to that problem that Mr. Muhammad is dedicated and sets forth the solution in The Fall of America. The black man must be awakened from his North American slumber and be made to realize his true nature, his true God, his true name, his true religion, and his inescapable destiny. America's world is floating in corruption. Its complete disintegration is both imminent and inescapable. Any man who integrates with that world must share in its disintegration and its destruction. If the black man of America would but listen, he need not be a part of this certain doom. If the black man will listen, Mr. Muhammad will do his best to teach him. John Ali, Chicago, Illinois, January 1973. Purchase the book.
Okay, now the significance in what I just showed you, family, was this. A lot of people have little slick, hip shit to say about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I just gave you a general synopsis of who that guy was and what he represented to us as a people and trying to come up out of a system that meant us no good. And this started way back in the 30s. And we're still here in 2022 disrespecting that man and what he brought and what he taught to us. And if it weren't for him, I'd still be in a dead state, you know? So I gotta come out and speak when I know better. And the thing is this, if he says something that's incorrect, correct him. Don't be telling me you don't like how the man looks, how he speaks. He sounds slow, but listen, because the minister even said one time that when he first was getting ready to get inducted into the Nation of Islam, he said Malcolm brought him to a meeting. And the messenger, who is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, told Malcolm, you know, he said, sit the brother up in the balcony next to such and such, and that way I'll know when I see such and such, I'll know where he is. Okay, so fast forward. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is giving the lecture, and the minister says he didn't speak it. He said he thought it. He said, damn, that's their leader? He can't even talk that good. And he said at that exact moment, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad looked up to where he was in the booth and said, brother, don't listen to how I say what I say. You listen to what I say, and you go put it in that fine language that you know and take it to the people. Are you hearing this?
Yeah.
Telepathy. He read the thoughts of this man and translated it right back into him and knew exactly what to say to him. And now you see how firm the Honorable Louis Farrakhan stands up behind the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. This was the initial meeting when he first sat in that balcony, and he got his mind read by a man that he thought was insignificant. And it turns out all the time, he was the significance of us as a people. You know, Malcolm and Martin and everybody that was along in that situation was significant to us. However, Noble Drew Ali and guys like Marcus Garvey predated the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The only difference is this, and I must admonish us, look at it right. The difference is this. When you come to somebody and ask permission, that's still a servitude type situation. When the Honorable Elijah Muhammad stepped on the scene, there was no more asking. We were coming and telling you what's going on and what it is and what it's going to be. So anybody that stands like that on manhood, I got to stand with them. And that's just where I'm at. I don't listen to nothing that's going on other than that. And when you tell me I believe in this, but I don't agree with everything, okay, cool, that's good. But anything that I've heard thus far has been principle type shit. And I don't shape shift, you know, like I stand up 100% all the time. You ain't gonna be able to come in no room and say, Trey, you said so and so, so. If I said it, man. And I tell you what I meant when I said it. And that's the difference between somebody that don't get their thoughts manufactured from somebody else versus a free thinker. If you are indeed a free thinker, listen to what someone is saying, process it inside of your own brain, and make your own determination and your own decisions via that information. King Rabbit was in here. He said, this is great information, bro. I hope you still feel that way, because at the end of the day, we all have to look at ourselves again in depthly. And that's why I backed up off the drama shit, because, bro, this is like bigger than life. We're approaching the point right now where it's going to be, what do you have stocked in your closet? Do you have water on deck? Do you have staples, beans and rice and canned goods and things that when they cut off the water, when they cut off the heat, do you have sterno heat? Do you have generators? Do you know how to make do? Can you hunt? It's gonna come a day, and we still sitting around here playing on YouTube. You see? So yeah, I had to get back to myself. You hear me, Chicky?
Yeah, I hear you.
It's like, you know, the shenanigans is good sometimes and it's entertaining sometimes. But at the end of the day, if you don't really say how you feel, people won't know how you feel. So I have to let them know that, you know, ain't no clown shit over here. And that's why I'm glad I ran into you and actually started looking at your page, because I heard what you said the other day. And that information that you got on your page, all of us over here as free thinkers should be over there discerning that information.
Right.
Because it's significant and it's apt directly to us, who we are and where we come from.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't want to hear it.
Why?
I don't know.
Are you ashamed?
I have no idea.
No, I'm asking in general. I know, but I'm just saying, are they ashamed of where they come from? See, and that's the whole point of view that I'm trying to push. Like, I love us. I don't care who talking about we came from Buddha with bones, and I love us as a people from wherever we come from, you know? So if anybody don't want to identify with that, because a lot of people, and this is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to teach. He say, Black people are ashamed of themselves. If you can come up out of that shame and take the hatred and the self-hatred away, then you'll start to look into the situation a whole lot differently. See, because at the end of the day, I had to do it myself. It's a transformation you really have to actually train yourself not to hate yourself via all the things that you've been taught and raised to believe. You know, it's like a reverse process.
Right. I went through that 10 years ago.
Yeah, they taught us to actually hate ourselves, hence hate one another. It was a process that was imposed upon us. And that way, the only way that could be reversed is a man had to come with drastic measures and with extreme content to reverse a process. That's what this was all about. It was a scientific experiment to take a people up out of something that had happened to them. And I promise you, I don't think it could have happened any other way, because so many of us now are aware of the knowledge. But you tell me prior to 1930 what we was doing. We talked about that Jim Crow situation, to how we had something, and all of a sudden now we ain't got nothing. You know, as soon as we was able to go shop with white folks, we dropped. Yeah, I ain't going to that nigga shop. That's it. Ain't nothing but a nigga. And you done heard the little sayings and the nuances. A nigga ain't shit.
Mm-hmm.
That nigga ain't no good. These are all sayings that come up out of slavery that resonated around us and made us believe that we were lesser of a people from a lesser God. And it happens and turns out that we were the cream of the crop. That's the whole Bible, where they say, I will take the stone that the builders rejected and make it the cornerstone. They don't get it though. I ain't gonna harp on it too long, BC, because I know people would rather hear somebody calling a woman a man, you know. So like, it's like,
not me.
You know,
I don't want to hear that.
Where is your value system, and what does that mean in terms of us trying to get up out of this situation that we in for all of us? You know, because everything that we do right now, you know, is going to affect the whole of the planet. That's why people can't be really all about the subjective shit. Me, 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 me. You're going to have to look outside of the box and look outside of yourself in terms of seeing how other people feel about certain situations, so you can know how to govern and operate and move properly, you know? Which is why, again, I had to back up off of a lot of the bullshit that I was doing and playing into a system that I'm really not no part of. I don't know. I'm not about that. You know, I want to see us do better. I want to see us get better, and I want to see us prosper as a people first. And if everybody, as a result of that, can live and prosper, I'm cool with that too. Yep.
Yeah, we could just get everybody on the same page.
Well, we got to get rid of the crabs in the bucket first. Like, if I go live, I'm not trying to say nothing about your live. I'm just speaking from my point of view and my perspective. If I watch your live and I give you a shout out, I'm not giving you that shout out for you to shout me out. I'm giving you my honest opinion on how I look at this. But I've been watching, you know, some of the content creators and how, you know, they go about their presentations of the content. And a lot of it looks like clout chasing to me. You know, I won't call no names just because I'm not speaking specifically, but I'm talking about this is all over. Like, for example, you're going to never see me in a hospital bed taking a picture for YouTube for views.
Right?
You that's some shit you're not going to see. And I love y'all dearly, but I'm just to the point to where I'm so grown, man, to where I don't even want that on your brain. I don't want you worrying about me like that. If you love me if you in fact love me like that, I don't want you with that stress. So I would be the last one to be, hey, how y'all doing? I'm on my last breath. No. Are you serious? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, man? This is what we do for clicks.
That's what
this
they
is what
do.
we doing for, but I'm saying, how obvious is it that is this what we doing for clicks and views?
Yep.
And if that ain't obvious enough, I'm like, man, come on. That to me, I got off the phone with my sister today about some shit that's going on with my brother in real life. I'm not gonna put y'all into a privy, but basically what I told both of them is grow the fuck up. Both of y'all on some kid shit, some childish shit that happened when y'all was in high school, because y'all went to high school with each other. They right along the same age, so they was in the same high school. I said, y'all need to sit the fuck down and talk about that, because now you got your kids talking about the situation. And that should have been capped right there. Minute my daughter would have said something about something my brother or sister said to me, I would have like, look, you what? Sit your ass down. Yeah, so no, I don't appreciate when people do anything for clout, you know. Some shit, yeah, okay. But when you do anything for clout, you look like an opportunist to me. And opportunists don't get nowhere in my camp. Them be the first motherfuckers I be wanting to set out like, nah, bro, because you'll sell us out.
Right.
You know, you'll take a cut. You'll take them chips that Judas took. Even though you might kill yourself before you able to spend them, you still gonna take them and sell us out. Oh, you don't do no shit like that. Who the fuck? You ain't gonna
take it with you.
You're not gonna hear. And I appreciate y'all family, but when my mama is on a hospital bed finna die, you not finna see me on no fucking YouTube.
Nobody should be. That's not something we should even know.
That's when people gonna be like, damn, what happened to Trey Leon? And I might or might not just pop back up one day and say, Slew family, how y'all been? And you gonna hear motherfuckers like, damn, where you been? But you wouldn't have heard nothing about the personal going on in situations of what just transpired in my personal life.
Right.
Because not only is it personal to me, it's shit that even if I got let's say an extended family out there, I don't want you worrying about that type of shit because you got shit going on in your life. Think about it.
That's how I see it too.
Why would you put that on somebody's plate, man? That's some selfish type of shit, man. No, I don't get down like that. And for everybody that's here, I appreciate y'all sliding through. I'm really not preaching Tamika, but if that's how it's being viewed, okay, I'm good with it. But I meant every word that was said. Like, we got to get better as a people. And we got to get away from this crabs in a bucket type of mentality to where, you know, if I'm talking and I'm saying something that's relevant and needs to be said, you can't say I'm talking too much. You got to deal with what I'm saying. Or either come and dispute what I'm saying or say what the hell you saying by saying I'm talking too much. You get it?
Mm-hmm.
All of this is relevant and I see it going on. I'm not calling no names. I'm just saying I see the narratives. I see all the shit. And this is what we got to get away from as a people. You can't hate on somebody because they channel might be getting certain views and now you want to come and troll them and drop porn bombs in their chat and shit. Like, man, that's what we doing.
That's crazy.
Is this what we doing as adults out here? I'm thinking this should be like sometimes I be wanting to think it's a 16 or 15 or 14-year-old troll out there somewhere that snuck up on his mama computer and made an account. And that's who be doing that shit.
I doubt it because it happens at all times.
I don't want to think there's nobody that's in our circle doing this shit.
You never know.
That's crazy. I tell you what, I got one other account and it says Trey Too Real. One says Trey Coleon, the other one says Trey Too Real. The only reason I made Trey Too Real the backup page because I already got 2 strikes on this page from hating motherfuckers. And I ain't been putting up nothing but basically music, and now I'm going into another different direction. But you remember last couple of times, my page got popped. We was just doing music.
Yeah.
You know, 14-day strike, man. And you got some people that'll be up here talking about straight nonsense forever. and deep throat and everything else. But then I get a community violation.
Right.
You got
YouTube is
kids
not
that
fair anyway, because some people can play music all day and all night and never get a strike. Why is that?
Facts. Because it's all about who you like. No, my bad.
No, you didn't.
Shout out to the 7 foot 50. I'm like, no. But look, at the end of the day, though, regardless of that, and I didn't say irregardless, black people, because that's not a word. Regardless, here go my daughter. Oh no, that's not it. Anyway. But regardless of that, if you look at this thing properly, the only way we're going to get away from a crabs in a bucket type of mentality is we got to look at it like white folks look at it. And I'm gonna clarify what I'm saying. Give me a second. I've been around both people in the similar situation to where you will be around some white people and they'll see some more white people building something and they'll say something to their husband like, oh, honey, look at that. Look at what we're doing. Isn't that great? And she just incorporated herself in some shit she ain't got nothing to do with. The same thing will go down with some blacks, and the black will be passing by a boy pulling up a billboard that looks something like them and like he could be some kid and say, what this nigga doing? This nigga ain't. You see the difference in the mentality?
Yes.
And it's that simple though. One incorporated themselves and just actually attached themselves with them people through whatever means. The other one just automatically dissed and said, man, this nigga ain't got shit going on. Fuck out of it. That's that self-hatred we was taught. So if a nigga ain't shit, that mean I ain't shit and ain't none of y'all shit. And we got to get away from that.
Yeah, we do.
I know these niggas is wearing their pants halfway down their fucking knees and all this other shit. I get it. I get it. I heard Rainey on a long rant about how these niggas in St. Louis doing it. It ain't everybody, but it is a certain sect that think that shit's cool and it's really not. But at the end of the day, it's a whole sect that let them think that's cool and pay homage to that shit and give them, daps and shit for doing that shit. Like I seen a chick on the internet just post some shit like, if my man don't look like this, don't talk to me. And this nigga had skinny jeans on up to his knees. He was like, I say, what the fuck? I'm like, is this what you want? And this lady was like 32 years old talking, and the dude looked like he might have been 19. He had on some old rainbow colored tight ass sweatshirt. I'm like, man, you tripping. But then when these little cats see them posts like that, they thinking, oh yeah, it's some chicks that like me too. Okay, I'm sure it is, but what's in their brain?
Right. Everything
the
is not for everybody either.
Of course not. Of course not. But the only way I think we're going to get up out of our condition is we're going to have to be on code on the same page.
Right.
It's not going to happen any other way. Everybody can't do their own thing with this because this is going to be the determining factor as opposed to are we together or not. They say, strength is in numbers. It's all about unity. I just told you how the white people look at it versus how we look at it.
Right.
And the only way it's going to happen is if we look at us like one, regardless to whatever the fuck going on in a circle. For the greater cause, can we sit the fuck down and talk about what we need to do to get over this hump?
It would be nice if we could.
Yeah, we'll deal with all the bullshit later, but let's get this accomplished first, and we all get our own and get our shit popping, and then, yeah, okay. Yeah, nigga, but you was fucked up back there, so and so. That's how it happens. I've never, and I have yet, to catch a white guy talking to me about another white guy.
They don't do it.
It don't happen. Even on TV, the Republicans against the Democrat, they'll find a way to realize, say, well, but Yeah, they ain't gonna straight dog them.
Nope.
Cause intergalactically they all connected. Shit.
Right. Even when they don't agree, the ones that don't agree, they don't say anything.
No, they just keep their mouth shut. And that's what mama used to tell you. If you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all.
Exactly.
But I ain't gonna talk y'all to death. I appreciate everybody that slid through. And the spirit was just on me to come up here and do this. I felt it was needed. Please hit the like and subscribe. Rewind, watch the rewind. It's significant. Me and Chicky was up here for a whole hour or so, just vibing, talking about us getting a little bit more kinetically involved as a people. Like, let's get over all these little small fraternal differences and sorority differences and try to, you know, start talking about a greater good and a greater purpose. Because these babies is important out here. And at the end of the day, when I'm on that bed where I can't take care of myself no more, I don't want nobody pinching me because of the shit I did to them when they was young. I want somebody that's gonna be standing at that door talking about, what you say to my granddaddy? It's a difference, and it'll happen. Because that's the way I feel about my mama. She not going to no old folks home. That lady gonna die in the back room in my sister in the house. And that's the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Salute y'all. Love you, family. Appreciate you for sliding through. Trey Coleon once again in the building. We're gonna try to maintain a positive outlook until somebody say something slick. And you know we got smoke. But Chicky, the next one on you though. Hey, I want to send you are you familiar with this thing called any video converter?
No.
I'm gonna send you a link for it because what it'll do is it'll help you download any YouTube video you want. You'll be able to convert it in MP4 file, MP3 file, the whole nine. And then it'll help you with like because I noticed some of your Swarty videos, it looked like, I don't know what format you did them in, but if you'd have downloaded them straight, they would have played straight.
Oh, okay.
But you know what I'm talking about though, right?
Yeah.
Well, without the glitches and stuff, but it's beautiful information. And I really wish a lot more other than Tamika would go past your channel and look at that because that's where we come from. That's our heritage. It's part of us. I mean, I'm tired of people just looking at us as African guineas, you know?
Yeah.
And something that's disrespectful. We worldwide. I got a video actually on my page that says first world. And what I mean by that, we first world everywhere.
Right.
Always that's what that's what the original title Globetrotters come from. If you go to any point on this planet, I bet you black people was there first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Facts. I'm just talking facts. If I'm lying, correct me. Anyway, thanks for everybody. Thank you, Chicky. I'm finna get off here, go take care of some stuff. Because I know my daughter gonna be calling me in a little bit about taking her to the movies, which I don't want to do. So I'm finna play sleep, I think. Maybe let her come over here, clean up the kitchen. I'm like, shit, you can watch any movie you want. I got, you know me, I can download it. All right, well, look, you have a nice evening. I'm gonna pop out and pop back in and see who online and everything. Salute to all of y'all. Y'all go sub up to Chicky channel, Sis Rabbit with the wrench, Tamika, Yo is Mike, IDK. I said King Rabbit, right? Queen's channel, Queen's Truth. Get them a holler. They out there too. Positivity, family. See y'all.
Bye.